Watching this recreation of Getting Over It in MapleStory Worlds, I can't help but think about what it was like to make games when I was a kid, back in the 1980s. At that time, there was nothing like MapleStory Worlds around. In fact, there were no accessible tools for making games. Of course, back in the original days of making video games in the 1960s and 70s, everything was just machine code, binary logic. When I was a kid, they tried to make things more accessible using a language called BASIC, which saved you from having to worry about computers, memory, how it functioned. But BASIC was not that basic. I would try again and again to learn how to make a video game. I'd get frustrated every time and just stop. And that pattern continued for years. When I was a teenager, I tried to learn to program in Ball and C. Tried again to learn in Turbo Pascal. Essentially, it was just always the same problem, which is that you had to be writing code. But everything changed in the early 2000s with the emergence of the new tools. Macromedia Flash, Game Maker, Multimedia Fusion, Click and Play. Suddenly there were all of these different ways that you could make a video game. And I started to realize that it would be possible for somebody like me, who's not particularly good with programming, to bring my own ideas to life. It wasn't just me. The emergence of those tools led to a giant wave of cultural ideas. In English, we have a lot of words for the kinds of games that we make in these tools. Indie game, freeware game, homebrew game, doujin game. But what's always been interesting to me, what's captivated me, is the kinds of games that people make when they're using these tools. In any art form, the types of artwork that people make are dictated by the tools that they use. Paintings are flat, they're two-dimensional, and making a painting is like looking through a little window at a scene. In the same way, a video game that was made purely from code has a different set of properties than one that was made in a tool. Tools take the technical side of game development out of the process. Instead of being worried about how to make the pixels move around on the screen, I'm freed to focus entirely on creative ideas. It's something like the difference between photography and painting. A painter has to worry about how to make the paint on the canvas look like something real. A photographer only needs to think about what they're going to be taking a photograph of and how to frame it. Making the original version of Getting Over It was a lot like that. I promised myself I wouldn't write a lot of code. I wouldn't build any 3D objects or make any art. I was going to build it like a collage out of existing parts, and I was going to follow through what that meant. And that process became the philosophy that would dictate the content of the game. To put it another way, if I'd used the traditional method for making video games, starting with a code file and building things from basic technology, I wouldn't have made the same game. To see my original game design rebuilt inside of MapleStory Worlds raises similar questions. In this version, anybody can make a level, much more easily and freely than when I made the game's original mountain. What does that mean for the mountains people will make within this program? And what kind of ideas will flow from the toolset that they're using and the process that they use to make those levels? One of the most interesting things that flows from having a tool that makes it so easy to make games is that the delicate balance of power between players and game creators is shifted. Here's how it works for an ordinary indie game. I work on my game for years or months. I put a lot of effort in to make sure that the player is going to have a good time and that they will tell their friends that the game is fun. And hopefully I'll be able to sell lots of copies of the game, and that will pay my rent, and I'll be able to continue to make games in the future. And I have to be quite careful about that because making games in the normal way is expensive. Even if it's made completely with open source tools, and even if there are no employees, just the amount of time that it takes means that making games is incredibly costly. And so as game developers, we become very careful. We don't want to waste our time. We don't want to waste all of that life force that we put into making a game. And the way that we do that is by taking every care to make sure that the players will be happy and that they'll be having a good time when they play the game. Another way to put it is game developers are the servants of the game players. At least that's how it normally is. But when we have a tool that makes it so easy to make a game that we can do it for very little cost, both in terms of money and time, that balance of power shifts. Suddenly it's okay to make a game without worrying about whether the player is having a good time. This changes everything. But it's not just a question of making games that are broken or not fun to play or frustrating or annoying. It means there's a whole world to explore ideas of what kinds of enjoyment can there be. What does it mean to enjoy a video game? What does it mean to take pleasure in play? Maybe that world is bigger than what we've previously imagined. Maybe we can answer those questions by having tools that make it so easy to explore these spaces. In the future, I can imagine things will get even easier. I'll be able to make a new video game just by saying a few words to a computer and having it do all of the hard work. I can't wait to find out what kinds of games people will invent when so many technical problems are moved out of the way and you can focus on pure creativity. But for now, let's just look forward to what people will make inside this tool. Where will it go?